Mississippi. Joining us now in the Element Wealth Studios here in the parking lot right in front of Sally Kate Winter's Family Services home is Senator Angela Turner Ford. She represents Clay, Lowndes, Noxubee, and Oktibbeha counties. That comprises District 16. Senator, good to see you, and thanks for coming by today.
Thank you, and good to see you as well. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. So, you guys finally got it done about 2 o'clock in the morning there, Saturday morning.
Finally. It was a grueling day, to say the least.
It was Sine Die, and a lot happened in the last couple of weeks, did it not?
It did. It did. I mean, conference reports were just coming in from various committees, and there was a lot to watch and follow.
Your overall impression of the session, Senator?
Well, some things I'm glad did not cross the finish line.
Okay.
Others, happy to see that we've gotten more funding for education and hospitals that we know that needed assistance. So I think overall I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad that some communities got some support that they needed.
So, and one of the last things you guys did was appropriate some money for the counties that were ravaged by the horrific tornadoes that ripped through the state a week and a half or so ago. And I think that was a good move. But it's going to take a long time to rebuild those areas. And this is really something that was necessary and kind of primes the pump. But I think you would agree, Senator, that we're all going to have to pitch in and help for a long time. I
agree. I mean, it was a start. Hopefully, MEMA, disaster relief, can kind of see where they can offer necessary support. But as you mentioned, with homes being destroyed, businesses, it's going to be a long road to recovery. Particularly
Rolling Fork and Silver City. It's devastating. I haven't been there personally and observed with my own eyes, but I've certainly seen lots of video, lots of photos. It's mind-boggling.
It is, and I would just have to point out Monroe County suffered damage as
absolutely.
Well. And
Amory, yep.
Yeah, we saw some reports about the number of homes that were destroyed in all of those areas, and it's devastating.
Yeah, we need a break here in Mississippi, don't we? We need a rest.
We do. Tremendously.
From all the weather. So, any particular bills that you were glad got across the finish line? We'll start with that first.
Well,
you talked about education funding, $120 million, I think, additional, right?
Exactly. I think there was early there was a Senate proposal which would have modified the formula, and then from there it would have been funded. But I perceive that as an initial proposal.
Okay.
But I'm glad that as we finish the session, we know that there is an additional $120 million going into education.
Okay. What are your thoughts about the Senate not confirming the Superintendent of Education hire by the State Board of Education, Dr. Robert Taylor?
I'm disappointed. I am. Just based on the credentials that I saw for Dr. Taylor, I thought that he would have been a plus-up for the state of Mississippi. I understand that there were some opposing views, but I'm disappointed, to say the least.
Okay. Well, there have been some who have suggested that this was racially motivated. Did you feel like that was the case from the senators that voted against his confirmation?
I'm troubled by the vote.
Okay.
I'm not going to go as far to say what motivated it or what didn't. But I would just like to say that going forward, the rigor that has been applied to Dr. Taylor's requirements and his accomplishments should be applied across the board for anyone else who is offered up for the position.
Do you think that there's a problem in the structure, the process of our system? You've got the State Board of Education that conducts interviews and searches for a superintendent, hires the superintendent. Superintendent reports to work in January, and then 2.5 months later, after having moved here, doesn't get confirmed by the Senate. Should we maybe change that up so that there is a confirmation in place before they actually step into the role and start work? It just seems strange to me.
What I would say is if we're going to have a process in place, it should be honored.
Okay.
And if we're not going to change it, we haven't up to this point, let's honor what we have put in place, those individuals that have, he's moved his family here.
Yeah, right.
And it hasn't really, a lot hadn't been said about it, but his wife is actually a native person from West Point.
Yeah.
And I just hate the position that he and his family have been put in by having moved here, gone through this interview process. Other potential candidates had been eliminated, and he was the last one to be offered, and now he has not been accepted.
Yeah. It just seems like we ought to figure out a way to get that done and have it all sealed up before someone steps into the job and again goes through the process of moving, resigning from their other job. So I'm being more critical of the process than I am the commenting on the confirmation.
And I understand that, but it hasn't been changed.
Yeah, I know. And it's a legacy way. And typically I don't want to say it's a rubber stamp deal, but usually it's more academic in terms of the Senate confirming nominees for various appointments. It usually goes through without any pushback on that. That didn't happen in this case.
And many of the other nominees for other boards and commissions were all confirmed.
Yeah.
Well, I think there was one.
One for Department of Education?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was one that was not confirmed, but it is extremely rare that occurs.
It is. All right, so what legislation did you support or ideas, proposals that didn't get enacted? What would you like to see happen that didn't happen?
Well, and I guess what I would be referring more to, well, let me start by saying the ballot initiative.
Okay.
I introduced a bill early on, and there were several others who introduced proposals to get the ballot initiative back online that were not brought out of committee. But the particular one that was heard, that came out of the Senate committee, died, basically.
Right.
I think it may have died in conference or it may have died on the calendar. I can't remember what the process was. But we do need a measure in place that allows the citizens to advance laws that they believe are important.
Yeah, I agree, and I can say that just certainly anecdotally from talking to lots of Mississippians, I think they're all disappointed as well. I haven't met a citizen yet that said, no, we don't need a ballot initiative process. The only place I've heard that's in the Capitol, honestly. But, of course, I think the big delta there in the views and the positions of what that ought to look like between the House and the Senate was the number of signatures. That was the big sticking point there. We couldn't get across. Where do you stand on that? Are you more in line with the House's version, with the existing as in what's embedded in our Constitution that's been now invalidated by the Supreme Court? Or were you more in support of the higher number that the Senate wanted?
I did not support the higher number, although I did vote for the measure. It was apparent as the vote was being taken on the floor that it might not pass at all, which would have meant that it would have died there.
Yeah.
And so I did support it, but I think it actually called for 12% of qualified electors or registered voters in the state, which is a high number.
240,000, according to my calculations,
right. Considering what we've had in the past.
Right, 108,000.
Right, so I think it was basically going to create a burden or a hurdle that we might not have been able to meet.
Yeah.
If the signatures had been acquired, well, it would have affected the number of signatures to be required. So I did not necessarily agree with it, but I think the proposal that was already installed or instituted in the Constitution required a simple fix, which was just to modify the number of congressional districts just based on the previous census. Well,
this will be something I'm sure that will be taken up once again, by the new House and Senate and state leaders, the governor. Because we got election year. You running for re-election?
I am.
Okay.
Unopposed.
Oh, well, congratulations.
And thankful to the citizens for allowing me to serve again.
Yeah, that's awesome. We only got a little bit left, but health care is a big problem in the state of Mississippi. In about a minute or less, what do you think?
I'm glad that the extension of Medicaid for women postpartum was allowed, increased to 12 months. I think that's just a small blip, but certainly I would love to see the full expansion of Medicaid. I'm glad that we were able to offer some support to those struggling hospitals, and I'm just hoping to do more next year.
Yeah, so we had a grant program that got passed, but it really seems more like a Band-Aid when you take a closer look at the financial performance and some of the struggles these hospitals are having.
Exactly. $100 million I just don't think is nearly enough.
Yeah.
But at this point, I believe every little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Senator, thank you for your service, and thanks so much for joining us here at Sally Kate Winters Family Services in West Point. Thank you.
Thank you. Always pleased to be here.
You've got it. We're coming right back with more here on Middays. Once again, from Sally Kate Winters Family Services. Go to sallykatewinters.org to make a donation to help out. Stay with us.